Hi, welcome to the Online Jewelry Academy. I'm Professor John Ahr and I'm your instructor. In this video, I'm going to show you how I created a special bezel for an uneven shaped stone. If you're like me and many other artists and jewelers, you've probably collected an assortment of really beautiful stones that you intend on using in a piece someday. Now, there are many ways of holding stones, and the Online Jewelry Academy has over 15 videos on this topic. You can find them on our website playlist at onlinejewelryacademy.com. They're under the very clever category name of Stone Setting. In this video, I'm going to show you how I custom made the bezel to hold this slightly uneven stone. I started this project by taking some 28 gauge fine silver bezel wire and wrapped it around the stone. Then I took my Sharpie and I marked the outside of the bezel wire exactly where it overlaps itself. For this project, I'm planning on using a very plain bezel wire, but there are all kinds of options, and I have a video on them called Bezel Wire Variations and Their Uses. The basic principle for creating a bezel remains the same. There are a few minor variations you would use if you're soldering a different type of bezel wire. Now, the next step I did was to straighten out the bezel wire, and I used diagonal cutters to cut the wire. I cut it on the outside of the line. To ensure that I have a perfectly straight cut edge, I need to perfect it, and I'll be using my 45 90-degree miter cutting jig. I open it, and I slide my piece in and line it up to the edge exactly. Then, I tighten the two holding screws which close the jig. Now I take my fine cut file and slide it across the surface. One of the great things about the jig is that this tool is made from hardened steel and it won't be damaged by a tool going against it. Before I started this demonstration, I had already prepared the first side of the bezel, so now both of them are completely straight and flat. Next, I bent the ends together so that they touched and prepared them for soldering by fluxing and placing 1 pallion of solder on the top of the joint. Then, using my soldering torch, I evenly heated the piece and then I focused the heat underneath the seam so that the solder flowed into it. I used my solder pick to ensure that I had solder evenly distributed. After quenching the piece, I pushed the bezel over the stone to both ensure that it was sized correctly and to shape it. As a secondary check, I set the bezel on the bench and put the stone in from the top. This double check helps ensure that the metal is holding the shape. Now I put the square piece of silver sheet metal, which I had cut to extend beyond the sides of the bezel, on top of a nest of steel wire, which was placed on my bench block. Then I put plenty of flux on it and carefully placed my bezel wire on top. In order for the solder to spread evenly onto the seam, I used tweezers to carefully place my 1 millimeter pallions of solder about 3 millimeters apart on the inside of the bezel cup. Now it's time to solder, and the soldering part can take a little time. You must make sure that you evenly heat the piece. That's why I have it on the nest. It allows me to heat it from the bottom. Once I evenly heat the bottom, I move the flame to heat the bezel wire. And when the solder flows, I quickly use my solder pick to ensure that the solder is evenly spread. The last part of the soldering process for most operations is to quench and pickle the piece so that it will be nice and clean and ready to be cut out. When cutting it out, you should always leave about an extra millimeter or so of material around the edges. Don't cut it too close because you'll get a better bezel if you file down the small ridge you leave after sawing. You can always finish the piece by polishing it to a mirror finish. If you've done everything right, the stone should fit perfectly and you're ready for setting. And I have lots of videos on this channel demonstrating how to set stones, and you can find them organized by a category on our webpage at onlinejewelryacademy.com. I hope you liked this video. If you're interested in learning more about the tools and various processes I performed here, I have a much more detailed video on this subject titled Soldering a Silver Bezel for a Cabochon Stone. And I have put a link for that in the description below. I also have over 300 free instructional videos covering a wide variety of topics and projects, and I also have 3 paid classes on udemy.com. I have a basic beginning jewelry making class, one on setting all different kinds of stones, and one demonstrating how to make a beautiful hinge bracelet. You can find discount codes in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so that you don't miss our future releases. Thanks for watching.